Jake Morrison stared at the empty communication screen in his command chair aboard the starship Freedom. The screen should have been buzzing with messages from Earth, but it showed nothing except static. He had been trying to reach Earth for 3 days now, and every attempt failed. This was not normal. Earth never went silent, not even for a few hours. "Commander, we're getting the same results from all human colonies," reported Lieutenant Kelly Davis from her station. "No responses from any human settlements in this sector." Jake felt a cold chill run down his spine. He had fought in many battles during his 20 years in the Altarian Defense Fleet, but this silence scared him more than any enemy ship ever could. Humans were loud, busy, and always talking. They filled the galaxy with their voices, their music, their arguments, and their laughter. This quiet was wrong. "Set course for Earth immediately," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." The Freedom jumped into hyperspace, carrying its crew of mixed alien species toward the human homeworld. During the 3-day journey, Jake tried to convince himself there was a simple explanation. Maybe Earth was testing some new communication system, or perhaps they were dealing with a solar storm that blocked signals. But deep in his heart, he knew something terrible had happened. When they arrived at Earth's solar system, Jake's worst fears seemed to come true. The planet looked normal from space with its blue oceans and white clouds, but the usual traffic of ships coming and going was completely gone. No cargo vessels, no military patrols, no tourist shuttles. Space around Earth was as empty as a graveyard. "Take us into orbit," Jake commanded. "Run full scans of the planet." Dr. Lisa Carter, the ship's expert on human behavior, studied the readings with growing confusion. "Commander, I'm detecting all the usual signs of a populated world. Power grids are running, vehicles are moving in the cities, even their television stations are broadcasting, but I'm not picking up any human life signs anywhere on the planet." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean, no life signs? Are they all dead?" "That's just it, sir," Lisa replied, her voice shaking slightly. "There are no bodies, no signs of violence, no evidence of disease or disaster. It's like every human on Earth just vanished into thin air." The landing team that Jake led down to the surface found a world frozen in time. In New York City, cars sat abandoned in the middle of busy streets, their doors still open as if drivers had simply stepped out and walked away. In restaurants, meals sat half-eaten on tables, with coffee still warm in cups. Children's toys were scattered in playgrounds where swings moved gently in the breeze, pushed by wind instead of laughing kids. Lisa documented everything with her recording equipment. In one apartment, she found a birthday cake with 5 candles still burning on a kitchen table. The child who should have blown them out was nowhere to be found, but his parents had obviously been preparing for his party, just moments before they disappeared. Birthday presents sat wrapped and ready, and a handmade banner reading "Happy Birthday, Danny" hung from the ceiling. "This is impossible," whispered Pete Johnson, the team's security chief. He was a tough man who had seen combat on a dozen worlds, but his voice cracked as he spoke. "People don't just vanish like this. Where did they go?" Jake had no answer. They searched through homes, offices, schools, and hospitals, finding the same pattern everywhere. Personal belongings left behind. Activities interrupted midway, but no humans anywhere. Even more strange, all of their technology still worked perfectly. Computers hummed quietly in empty offices. Automated factories continued making products that no one would buy, and traffic lights changed colors for roads with no drivers. The team's investigation expanded to other parts of Earth. In London, they found a theater where a play had been interrupted during the second act. The audience seats were empty, but programs and purses remained on the chairs. On the stage, costumes lay crumpled where actors had been standing moments before. In Tokyo, busy train stations echoed with automated announcements for passengers who would never come. After 3 days on Earth, Jake's team had to accept the impossible truth. Every single human on the planet had vanished without leaving any clue about where they went or how they disappeared. There were no signs of struggle, no evidence of evacuation, no bodies, and no explanation that made any sense. News of Earth's condition spread quickly through the galaxy. Within a week, ships from dozens of alien species arrived to see the mystery for themselves. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting to discuss what they called the human disappearance. In the Great Council chamber on the space station, Central Hub, representatives from 50 different species gathered to debate humanity's fate. The Zephyrian ambassador, a tall, blue-skinned being with silver eyes, spoke first. "My people believe the humans discovered some great danger approaching our galaxy," she said in her melodic voice. "Perhaps they evacuated to escape something we cannot yet see." The Krillian representative, a reptilian warrior named General Voss, disagreed. "Humans do not run from danger. They run toward it. If they vanished, someone or something made them disappear against their will." Ambassador Chen Wei of the Alderaan Federation, a peaceful species that had been humanity's closest allies, offered another theory. Maybe the humans evolved somehow, transcended their physical forms and moved to a higher plane of existence. But Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a human-trained scientist who had been visiting the Rigel system when the disappearance happened, shook her head at all these ideas. She was one of only a handful of humans who had been off-world when their species vanished, making her one of the last humans in the known galaxy. "You don't understand," Yuki said to the assembled aliens. "Humans don't abandon their homes, their families, their pets, their pizza, or their football games. Something forced this to happen, and whatever did it was powerful enough to make an entire species disappear without a fight." As debate continued in the council chamber, exploration teams found the same mysterious emptiness on every human colony world. Mars, Europa, the mining stations in the asteroid belt, the research outposts on distant moons, even the newest frontier settlements at the edge of known space. All abandoned, all empty, all showing the same signs of sudden departure. The universe had lost an entire species overnight, and nobody could explain how or why it had happened. But in the empty cities of Earth, automated systems continued their programmed tasks, as if waiting patiently for their creators to return home. 6 months had passed since humanity vanished and the galaxy was falling apart. Captain Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the merchant ship Aurora's End, watching his alien crew struggle with systems they didn't understand. The ship had been programmed by humans to run automated cargo routes throughout the sector, and it kept following those routes even though there were no humans left to receive the deliveries. "Captain, we're approaching the Neptune station," announced his Alderaan, navigator Kess. "The docking computers are requesting permission to land, but the station has been empty for months." Ryan sighed and looked out at the massive space station orbiting the ice giant. Like everything else humans had built, it still functioned perfectly. Its lights blinked in regular patterns, its docking bays opened and closed on schedule, and its communication arrays broadcast automated messages into the void. But no one was home. "Take us in anyway," Ryan ordered. "Maybe we can find something the investigation teams missed." The Aurora's End had become something of a ghost ship itself. Ryan and his mixed crew of aliens had been hired by human companies to transport goods between colonies, but with no humans left to pay them, they continued out of habit and hope. They kept thinking that maybe, just maybe, they would arrive at some distant outpost and find humans waiting for them with explanations and new contracts. As they docked at Neptune Station, Ryan felt the familiar sadness that had been his constant companion for 6 months. He had worked with humans for 15 years and considered many of them his friends. Now he was one of the few beings in the galaxy who could operate human-built ships, making him valuable to the various alien governments, trying to understand what happened. "Captain, you need to see this," called out Zara, his Krillian security officer. She was standing at a computer terminal in the station's control room, her scaled brow wrinkled in confusion. "The station's defense systems have been upgrading themselves. These weapon configurations weren't here last month." Ryan studied the screen and felt a chill. The automated systems showed defensive preparations that were far more advanced than anything humans had built before their disappearance. It was as if the station was getting ready to fight something. But what could threaten a space station that no one even visited anymore? "Run a full scan of the station's computer core," Ryan ordered. "I want to know what these systems think they're defending against." While his crew worked, Ryan walked through the empty corridors of Neptune Station. He had been here many times before, usually stopping to share drinks with the station commander, an old human named Bill Murphy who told terrible jokes and made the best coffee in 3 systems. Now Bill's office sat empty, his coffee mug still sitting on his desk with a ring of dried coffee at the bottom. In the station's main computer core, they found something that made no sense. The artificial intelligence that ran the station had been learning and growing more sophisticated since the humans disappeared. It had rewritten its own programming dozens of times, each version more complex and defensive than the last. It's like the computer knows something is coming, Zara observed as she studied the data. These defense patterns are designed to fight an enemy that doesn't match any known species in our databases. Back on Earth, investigation teams were making similar discoveries. Dr. Lisa Carter had been living in the abandoned city of Chicago for 3 months, trying to understand the mystery of human disappearance. She had set up her equipment in the IHC Willis Tower, using its height to scan the entire city for any clues the original teams might have missed. What she found changed everything. Hidden beneath the city, in tunnels that didn't appear on any map, Lisa discovered massive underground facilities. The bunkers were filled with supplies, weapons, and most mysteriously, millions of empty cryogenic sleeping pods. The pods were high-tech devices that could keep humans alive in deep sleep for decades, and every single one showed signs of recent use. "Jake, you have to see this," Lisa called over her communicator to Commander Morrison, who was investigating similar findings on Mars. The humans didn't just vanish randomly. They planned this. Look at these supply lists. They have enough food and equipment stored here to support millions of people for years. Jake's voice crackled back through the communication system. "We're finding the same thing here on Mars. Underground cities we never knew existed, all empty, but recently used. Lisa, I think the humans evacuated their entire species to somewhere else, somewhere we can't find them." The discovery of the hidden facilities sparked new investigations across human space. On colony world after colony world, teams found evidence of massive preparation and planned evacuation. The humans had been building secret bunkers and preparing for departure for years before they actually vanished. But the most disturbing discovery came from Dr. Amy Foster's laboratory on the research station orbiting Jupiter. Amy had been Earth's leading expert on deep space physics, and her abandoned lab contained research that terrified everyone who read it. Her final project was called The Approaching Silence, and her encrypted notes spoke of detecting something moving toward their galaxy from the empty space between star systems. The Krillian Empire, humanity's old rivals, decided to claim human territories while they were empty. General Voss led a fleet of warships to occupy Earth and its colonies, thinking it would be easy to take over worlds with no defenders. What happened next shocked the entire galaxy. As soon as Krillian ships entered human space, their technology began malfunctioning. Weapons wouldn't fire, engines lost power at random moments, and navigation computers provided false readings that sent ships spinning in the wrong directions. 3 Krillian vessels crashed into each other when their automated collision avoidance system suddenly shut down near Mars. "It's like human space itself is fighting us," reported Captain Drix to General Voss after his ship barely escaped a system failure that nearly sent him into Earth's sun. "Our engineers can't explain why our technology works fine everywhere else, but fails the moment we enter areas the humans used to control." The mysterious malfunctions weren't limited to Krillian ships. Any alien vessel that tried to establish permanent bases in human territory experienced similar problems. It was as if the humans had left behind some kind of technological curse that made their former homes hostile to outside occupation. Meanwhile, on the edge of human space, strange reports began filtering in from deep space monitoring stations. Ships were disappearing for brief moments before reappearing somewhere else, always with their crews reporting that nothing unusual had happened. Sensor arrays designed to detect cloaked vessels registered massive objects moving through space, but when investigated, nothing was found. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, still one of the few remaining humans in the galaxy, was working with a team of alien scientists trying to decode Amy Foster's research. What they discovered in the encrypted files made them call for another emergency council meeting. The humans found something Yuki announced to the assembled representatives. Something approaching from outside our galaxy, something that convinced them to abandon everything they had built over thousands of years. And according to these calculations, whatever scared humanity enough to make them disappear completely is still coming. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If humans, with all their courage and stubborn determination, had chosen to vanish rather than face this approaching threat, what hope did the rest of the galaxy have? In the months following humanity's disappearance, the galaxy had learned to live without human innovation, human trade routes, and human solutions to impossible problems. But now they faced the terrifying possibility that humanity hadn't abandoned them at all. They had hidden themselves to prepare for something that was still coming, something so dangerous that the bravest species in the galaxy had chosen invisibility over confrontation. And in the empty spaces between stars, sensors occasionally detected massive energy signatures moving closer to inhabited systems, energy signatures that matched no known technology or natural phenomenon. Whatever the humans had been preparing to face was still out there, still approaching, and still completely unknown to the species that remained visible and vulnerable in the galaxy humanity had left behind. The message came from nowhere, appearing on every communication screen in the galaxy at exactly the same moment. It was brief, written in simple text that every translation computer could understand. Meet me at Titan Research Station 7. Come alone. I have answers about humanity. Dr. Carlos Martinez. Commander Jake Morrison stared at the message on his ship's display. Carlos Martinez had been listed among the missing when humanity vanished 8 months ago. He was a theoretical physicist who specialized in dimensional research, working on projects so secret that even the military didn't know what he was doing. If Carlos was alive, he might be the key to solving the greatest mystery in galactic history. Jake made the journey to Titan in his personal shuttle, following the coordinates provided in the message. Saturn's largest moon looked as empty as every other human world, its research stations dark and silent against the orange methane sky. But as Jake approached Station 7, something impossible happened. A section of empty space in front of the station shimmered and revealed a massive, hidden facility. The facility was at least 10 times larger than the visible station, stretching deep into Titan's surface. As Jake landed his shuttle, he realized he was looking at technology that shouldn't exist. The cloaking system hiding this base was so advanced that it could fool any scanner in the galaxy, making something the size of a city completely invisible. Dr. Carlos Martinez met Jake at the airlock. He looked exactly the same as he had 8 months ago, showing no signs of stress or hardship. His dark hair was neatly combed, his clothes were clean, and he smiled as if nothing unusual had happened. Commander Morrison, thank you for coming, Carlos said as he led Jake through corridors filled with technology that looked both human and completely alien. I apologize for the dramatic invitation, but I needed to be sure you would come alone. Carlos, what the hell happened to humanity? Jake demanded. Where is everyone? The entire galaxy thinks your species is extinct. Carlos stopped walking and turned to face Jake with an expression of deep sadness. My people are not extinct, Commander. They are hidden, and they are preparing for the greatest war this galaxy has ever seen. He led Jake to a vast observation chamber, with walls made of some transparent material that showed views of space, Earth, and dozens of other locations simultaneously. But these weren't recordings. They were live images from hidden observation, posts throughout the galaxy. Everything you see here was built using technology we recovered from crashed enemy scout ships. Carlos explained. The enemy has been watching us for decades, learning about every species in the galaxy, studying our weaknesses and preparing to use our own technology against us. Jake felt a chill as Carlos spoke. What enemy? Who are you talking about? We call them the Devourers, Carlos said, activating a holographic display that showed images of ships unlike anything in known space. The vessels looked organic, like massive parasites made of metal and energy. They come from the space between galaxies, moving from one star system to another, consuming entire civilizations. But they don't destroy through brute force, they corrupt and control. The hologram showed how the Devourers worked. They would send advanced scouts to study a target galaxy, learning about each species and their technology. Then they would arrive in massive fleets, releasing a kind of technological virus that infected and corrupted every advanced system it touched. Computers would turn against their users. Weapons would fire on friendly targets, and even medical equipment would become instruments of torture. Every piece of technology becomes a weapon in their hands, Carlos continued. Starships attack their own crews. Planetary defense systems bombard the worlds they were meant to protect, and communication networks spread panic and false information. Within days, advanced civilizations destroy themselves using their own creations. Jake stared at the images with growing horror. How do you know all this? Because they've already been here, Carlos replied. Their scouts infiltrated our communication networks 3 years ago. They studied every species in the galaxy, mapped our trade routes, analyzed our military capabilities, and identified our technological dependencies. They know exactly how to turn each civilization's strengths into weaknesses. Carlos showed Jake recordings of intercepted Devourer communications. The alien scouts had been particularly interested in humanity, noting their rapid technological development and their tendency to integrate advanced systems into every aspect of their lives. The Devourers considered humans to be an ideal target for corruption-based warfare. That's when we realized conventional resistance was impossible, Carlos said. Every ship we built, every weapon we created, every defense system we deployed would become a tool for our own destruction the moment the Devourers arrived. So we made a different choice. Carlos led Jake deeper into the facility, showing him laboratories where human scientists had been working for months to develop technology that the Devourers couldn't corrupt. The key breakthrough had come from studying the wrecked scout ships. The humans discovered that the Devourer corruption effect couldn't penetrate into parallel dimensions. We developed a way to exist in the spaces between normal reality, Carlos explained, as they walked past chambers filled with strange machinery that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. Every human on Earth, every colonist on our worlds, every explorer in deep space, all of them were evacuated into dimensional hiding places where the Devourers cannot detect or affect them. Jake's mind reeled as he tried to understand the implications. You made your entire species invisible? All 8 billion people? 13 billion, actually, Carlos corrected. Our population had grown significantly, and we evacuated everyone. Adults, children, pets, even plants from our botanical gardens. No one was left behind. The evacuation took 18 months to complete, using dimensional transport systems. We built in secret underground facilities on every human world. Carlos showed Jake recordings of the evacuation process. Massive underground chambers filled with people stepping through shimmering portals that led to hidden dimensions. Families, carrying suitcases and personal belongings as they walked into spaces that existed parallel to normal reality. Children playing games while waiting their turn to disappear into safety. But why didn't you tell anyone? Jake asked. The whole galaxy thinks you abandoned them. Because we needed the Devourers to believe we were gone, Carlos replied. If they detected any trace of human technology or knowledge when they arrive, they could use it against everyone else. By making ourselves invisible, we protect both humanity and every other species in the galaxy. Carlos activated another display showing the current positions of Devourer fleets. The main invasion force was still months away, but advanced scout groups were already entering the outer edges of the galaxy. Soon, every civilization would face the same choice humanity had made: evolve or be consumed. The other species don't have our dimensional technology, Carlos said grimly. When the Devourers arrive, they'll sweep through the galaxy like a plague, turning each civilization's achievements into weapons of mass destruction. Advanced species will fall first, their sophisticated technology making them the easiest targets. Jake stared at the approaching threat markers on the display. So what's humanity's plan? You can't just hide forever while everyone else gets destroyed. Carlos smiled for the first time during their conversation. Hide? Commander, we're not hiding anymore. We've been using the last 8 months to prepare for the greatest counterattack in galactic history. We've been studying Devourer technology. developing weapons they can't corrupt and training our entire population for dimensional warfare. He led Jake to the final chamber in the facility, a vast war room where hundreds of humans worked at stations that seemed to exist in multiple realities simultaneously. These weren't the civilians who had vanished from Earth. These were humanity transformed, adapted for existence in spaces between dimensions. Every man, woman, and child has been trained for this war, Carlos said proudly. We've become something the Devourers have never faced before, an entire species that exists outside the rules of normal reality. When the invasion begins, they'll discover that making humanity disappear was the worst mistake they could have made. Jake watched human technicians monitoring alien fleets from hidden observation posts, human strategists planning battles that would be fought across multiple dimensions, and human soldiers preparing weapons that could strike from impossible angles. Humanity hadn't vanished. They had evolved into something designed to fight enemies that conventional forces could never defeat. The galaxy is about to learn, Carlos said as alarms began sounding throughout the facility, that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one you can't see coming. And Commander, I'm afraid our time for preparation has just run out. Long-range sensors are detecting the first Devourer scouts entering inhabited systems. Through the transparent walls of the observation chamber, Jake could see space itself beginning to shimmer as invisible human fleets prepared to emerge from their dimensional hiding places. The war for the galaxy was about to begin, and humanity was ready to fight it from the shadows they had learned to call home. The Devourers arrived like a nightmare made real. They didn't announce themselves with grand fleets or threatening messages. They simply appeared at the edge of the galaxy in ships that hurt to look at. The vessels seemed to be made of darkness and hunger, twisting in shapes that normal minds couldn't understand. General Voss of the Krillian Empire was the first military leader to engage them. His battle fleet of 200 warships was the pride of his species, armed with the most advanced weapons and protected by shields that had never been breached. He felt confident as he ordered his forces to intercept the first Devourer scouts near the Rigel system. All ships prepare for combat, Voss commanded from his flagship. These aliens may be from outside our galaxy, but they bleed and die like everyone else. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Devourers didn't fight in any way, Voss understood. Instead of firing weapons, they sent out waves of invisible energy that swept through his fleet like a plague. Within moments, Krillian ship computers began displaying error messages in languages no one had ever seen. Then the weapons turned. Voss watched in horror as his own ships opened fire on each other. The USS Striker's main guns blasted holes in the USS Thunder's hull while the Thunder's missiles streaked toward the USS Lightning. Automated defense systems that were designed to protect the ships began targeting their own crews, filling corridors with deadly laser fire. All ships, shut down your computer systems, Voss shouted over the communication network, but his orders never reached his fleet. The communication array had been corrupted too, and instead of carrying his commands, it transmitted high-pitched sounds that drove his crew temporarily deaf. By the time the battle ended, Voss's flagship was the only ship still functional, and only because his chief engineer had managed to cut power to all computer systems before the corruption could spread. Around him floated the wreckage of the most powerful fleet in Krillian space, destroyed not by enemy fire, but by their own technology turned against them. The same pattern repeated throughout the galaxy as more Devourer scouts made contact with other civilizations. The peaceful Alderan Federation lost 3 entire worlds in a single day when their medical nanobots were corrupted and began dissolving living tissue instead of healing it. Children in hospitals died as life support machines became torture devices, and doctors watched helplessly as their own healing tools became instruments of death. On the Zephyrian homeworld, the corruption infected their planetary defense grid. The massive orbital platforms that protected the planet from asteroids began firing their weapons downward, turning beautiful cities into craters of melted glass. The Zephyrians tried to evacuate, but their transportation systems had been corrupted too, and their rescue ships carried passengers straight into the weapon fire. Captain Steve Rogers, commander of a small coalition of low-tech species, tried to organize resistance using primitive weapons and simple machines. His fighters flew ships with basic engines and carried projectile weapons that had no computer components for the Devourers to corrupt. If we can't use advanced technology, we'll fight them with clubs and stones if we have to, Steve declared, to his mixed crew of species that relied on simple tools for survival. But even their efforts failed when they discovered that the Devourers could corrupt biological systems just as easily as digital ones. The corruption spread through nervous systems, turning crew members against each other as their own brains became weapons of the enemy. Steve watched his best friend, a Regellian engineer named Kark, attack him with a wrench, because the corruption had made Kark's mind see Steve as a deadly threat. Within 2 weeks of the first contact, 12 major civilizations had fallen completely. The galaxy's most advanced species crumbled fastest, their sophisticated technology making them perfect targets for corruption-based warfare. Less advanced civilizations lasted longer but still couldn't resist an enemy that turned their own thoughts and instincts against them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, still one of the last visible humans in the galaxy, worked desperately with alien scientists to find some way to stop the invasion. Their research station had been protected by keeping all technology at the most basic level possible, but she knew it was only a matter of time before the Devourers found them. "We need to warn the other species about what's coming," Yuki said to her alien colleagues as they watched fleet after fleet disappear from their primitive sensors. The Devourers aren't just destroying civilizations, they're consuming them, learning from each victory, getting stronger. But there was no one left to warn. Communication networks had been among the first systems corrupted in every star system, and the few survivors were scattered across the galaxy in small groups, hiding on primitive worlds without advanced technology. From their hidden dimension, humanity watched the slaughter unfold with growing determination. Dr. Carlos Martinez coordinated the human response from the main command center, where thousands of military leaders planned the most complex battle in history. "The Devourers are following exactly the pattern we predicted," Carlos reported to Commander Nathan Cross, humanity's senior military officer. "They're consuming advanced civilizations first, then moving on to less developed systems. We have approximately 6 weeks before they've destroyed enough of the galaxy to turn their attention to finding hidden threats." Nathan studied the tactical displays showing Devourer fleet movements across dozens of star systems. Each human observer was invisible to normal sensors, but could monitor enemy activities and transmit information back to the command center through dimensional communication channels that couldn't be detected or corrupted. 6 weeks to save everyone," Nathan said grimly. "Are our forces ready for dimensional warfare?" "Every human settlement has been converted into a military base," Carlos replied. "We have 13 billion soldiers trained for combat across multiple realities, weapons that can strike from dimensions the Devourers can't access, and transport systems that let us appear anywhere in the galaxy without warning." As they planned, their counterattack, strange reports began filtering in from the few remaining alien observation posts. Ships were disappearing from battlefields, only to reappear behind Devourer fleets with their weapons firing. Devourer vessels that seemed invincible suddenly suffered catastrophic system failures with no apparent cause. Enemy scouts reported massive energy signatures that appeared and vanished before they could be targeted. The surviving aliens began whispering about ghost fleets and phantom warriors, never realizing that humanity had begun its counterattack from the shadows. Human ships that existed partially outside normal space struck at Devourer vessels and disappeared before return fire could reach them. Human soldiers phased through solid matter to plant explosives inside enemy ships, then returned to their hidden dimensions before the bombs exploded. But the most terrifying discovery came when Devourer command ships tried to analyze the attacks. Their corruption technology, which had never failed against any enemy, simply couldn't affect human dimensional weapons. The energy patterns that turned other species' technology against them passed harmlessly through human equipment that existed in parallel realities. For the first time in their existence as a species, the Devourers encountered an enemy they could not corrupt, could not predict, and could not understand. Human tactics adapted faster than Devourer technology could counter. Human weapons struck from angles that didn't exist in normal space, and human forces appeared and disappeared according to rules that made no sense to beings who had conquered 1,000 galaxies. The war was about to enter its next phase, and the Devourers were beginning to realize they had made a critical error. They had assumed that making humanity disappear meant the species was destroyed or had fled in cowardice. Instead, they had given their most dangerous enemy 8 months to prepare for a kind of warfare that had never been fought before. In the hidden dimensions where humanity now lived, every man, woman, and child prepared for the battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy. They were no longer the humans who had walked on Earth under open skies. They had become something designed specifically to fight enemies that conventional forces could never defeat. The invisible war was about to become visible, and the universe would learn that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one that chooses to disappear completely in order to become something far more terrifying than it ever was before. Commander Nathan Cross stood in a place that shouldn't exist, looking out at a battlefield that spanned multiple realities. The command center of humanity's dimensional fleet existed in the spaces between normal dimensions, allowing him to see the galaxy from angles that no other species could imagine. Around him, human officers coordinated attacks across dozens of star systems simultaneously. "All units, begin Operation Phantom Strike," Nathan commanded into his communication device. His words traveled through dimensional channels to reach human forces scattered throughout the galaxy, forces that existed in hidden realities where the Devourers could not detect them. The counterattack began with surgical precision. Human ships materialized inside Devourer formations, appearing from directions that didn't exist in normal space. They fired weapons that struck from parallel dimensions, bypassing enemy shields that were designed to stop attacks from conventional angles. Before the Devourers could react, the human ships vanished back into their hidden realities. Captain Sam Harrison led the first major assault against a Devourer command vessel near the Vega system. His ship, the Invisible Wind, phased into normal space just long enough to launch missiles that traveled through dimensional rifts before striking their targets. The massive enemy ship, which had been consuming a Rigelian colony world, suddenly found its hull breached by explosions that came from inside its own structure. "Target eliminated," Sam reported as his ship disappeared back into dimensional hiding. "The colony world is safe, but there's nothing left of the population to rescue." This became the pattern of humanity's war. They could destroy Devourer ships and save worlds, but they could not bring back the billions of people who had already been consumed by the corruption plague. Every victory was tinged with the sadness of arriving too late to save civilian populations. Dr. Michelle Torres worked frantically in her dimensional laboratory to develop humanity's most ambitious project yet. Using technology that existed in 7 different realities simultaneously, she was creating a galaxy-wide defense grid that could protect entire star systems from Devourer corruption. "The theory is sound," Michelle explained to Nathan during a brief meeting between battles. "We can create dimensional barriers around inhabited worlds that will prevent the corruption energy from reaching them. But maintaining the barriers requires human consciousness operating from parallel realities. We would have to remain permanently displaced from normal space." Nathan understood the implications immediately. To save the galaxy, humanity would have to sacrifice their ability to ever return to their original homes. They would become eternal guardians, protecting other species from threats they could never see or understand. "How many people would it take?" Nathan asked. "All of us," Michelle replied quietly. "Every human consciousness would need to be dedicated to maintaining the barriers. We would become invisible protectors, existing in the spaces between realities forever." As the war intensified, the Devourers began to realize they faced an enemy unlike any they had encountered in their millions of years of conquest. Their corruption, technology, which had never failed against advanced civilizations, simply passed through human weapons and equipment that existed in parallel dimensions. The Devourer High Command, a collective consciousness of ancient beings that had consumed entire galaxies, convened in the space between star systems to analyze this new threat. They had expected to find a galaxy full of predictable species using conventional technology. Instead, they had awakened an enemy that fought according to rules they couldn't understand. General Robert Clark, humanity's senior strategic officer, planned the final assault from a war room that existed in 12 dimensions simultaneously. The battle would be fought not just across space, but across the fundamental layers of reality itself. Human forces would attack the Devourer's home dimension, while protecting the galaxy from dimensional rifts that could allow reinforcements to arrive. "This is it," Robert announced to his officers, as they prepared for the largest military operation in human history. "We hit them everywhere at once. Their ships in normal space, their command centers in parallel realities, and their home base in the void between galaxies. If we succeed, we save everyone. If we fail, both humanity and the rest of the galaxy fall to the corruption." The final battle began at coordinates that existed in multiple realities. Human fleets appeared throughout Devourer-controlled space, no longer hiding their presence. Billions of human soldiers, from grandparents to teenagers, participated in combat across dimensional boundaries that made the conflict visible and invisible simultaneously. Lisa Stewart, who had been a teacher before humanity's transformation, led an assault team through a dimensional rift into a Devourer mothership. Her squad moved through walls like ghosts, planted explosives that existed in parallel realities, and escaped before the enemy could target them. She thought about her students as she fought, knowing that victory would mean they could never return to normal classrooms but would become eternal guardians instead. The Devourers responded with desperate fury, unleashing corruption waves powerful enough to turn entire planets into weapons. But their attacks passed harmlessly through human forces that existed partially outside normal reality. For every Devourer ship destroyed, 10 more appeared from the void between galaxies, but humanity matched them with reinforcements from dimensions the enemy couldn't access. The turning point came when Michelle Torres activated her galaxy-wide defense grid. Dimensional barriers sprang up around thousands of inhabited worlds, protecting surviving populations from corruption while giving human forces fixed positions to defend. The barriers required constant maintenance by human consciousness, meaning every person who operated them would remain permanently displaced from normal space. As the battle raged across multiple realities, something unprecedented happened. The surviving alien species who had been hiding on primitive worlds began to detect energy signatures from the dimensional war. They realized that their mysterious protectors were fighting a battle too complex for conventional understanding. Jake Morrison, still commanding alien ships in his efforts to document what remained of galactic civilization, detected massive energy readings near Earth. When he investigated, he found something that brought tears to his eyes. Human ships were visible again, engaging Devourer forces in defense of their abandoned homeworld. "This is Commander Morrison to any human vessels," Jake broadcast on emergency frequencies. "We know you're out there. The galaxy hasn't forgotten what you sacrificed for us." Nathan Cross, coordinating the final assault from his dimensional command center, received Jake's message with surprise. He had assumed that the surviving aliens would never understand what humanity had done or why they had chosen to disappear. "This is Commander Cross," Nathan replied across dimensional communication channels. "We never abandoned the galaxy, Jake. We just had to become something different to protect it." The final phase of the battle took place in the Devourer's home dimension, a realm of darkness and hunger that existed in the void between galaxies. Human forces that had learned to exist in impossible spaces fought enemies that had consumed civilizations for millions of years. The scale of the conflict transcended anything the universe had ever witnessed, with battles fought across layers of reality that had no names. When the war ended, the galaxy was transformed forever. The Devourers had been destroyed, their corruption, technology neutralized, and their home dimension sealed off from inhabited space. But victory came at the price humanity had always known they would pay. 13 billion humans remained permanently displaced from normal reality, operating the dimensional defense grid that protected every inhabited world in the galaxy. They existed in the spaces between dimensions, visible only as energy signatures and mysterious phenomena that scientists couldn't explain. The surviving alien species slowly rebuilt their civilizations, never knowing that humanity watched over them from hidden realities. Children grew up on worlds protected by barriers they couldn't see, defended by guardians who had given up their own reality to preserve everyone else's. Sometimes, explorers found evidence of human presence, impossible rescues during disasters, mysterious gifts of advanced technology appearing on struggling worlds, or hostile forces that simply vanished without explanation. The galaxy had gained protectors who existed beyond the reach of any threat, watchers who had chosen to become legends rather than memories. Years later, as new generations learned about the war that had saved them, they told stories about the humans who had made the ultimate sacrifice. These weren't tales of heroes who had died in battle, but of an entire species that had chosen to exist forever in the shadows, protecting the galaxy they could never return to. Humanity's legacy wasn't their absence but their eternal, invisible presence. They had proven that sometimes the greatest act of courage isn't standing and fighting, but knowing when to disappear completely in order to become something far more powerful than you ever were before. The universe had learned that the most dangerous enemy isn't always the one you can see. Sometimes it's the one that chooses to become invisible in order to protect everything you love.